Hello and welcome back to Frivolous Gravitas with myself, Chris Driver, and I'm here with my co-host, Jordan Roy, and we're discussing the, I don't even know how to call it, I guess the extremism as an ism, but having defined our terms in the first section and sort of laid out some of the groundwork of where we're taking the discussion. Moving forward, thinking it might be a good place to, or a good time to start asking questions about the conflict, like the antagonist or what the other group is in the perspective of interrelations between extremist groups, centrist groups, etc. So maybe you could take us on or take us where you'd like to go with that.
Yeah. So, sorry, excuse me.
Pardon the shitty introduction.
Okay. We don't seem to be good at introductions, so
no.
We
that
generally
takes
tend
thought
to
and planning. I'm not very good at that.
Well, and we always tend to be at our best when we get that momentum. So
yeah, momentum. This is just a kick down the road. That's how we're getting you going.
Yeah. So more like stumble and then use that momentum to actually walk.
Botter la fesse.
So one thing that I've kind of noticed from my extremist days, and which we will get into in probably our episode on protesting, is that there isn't always another. There's always something else. There's always another group or another person or a scapegoat or something. It's just another that you can have as your antagonist. And this is very convenient. Now it's nice when someone's, the barbarians are coming over the hills and they're coming to steal your stuff and burn down your village. You have this nice visible other that you can be like, all right, let's get at her. And you know what you need to do. There's no gray area. They're the bad guys, you're the good guys, and they made a very satisfying thump when they hit the ground. But everyday life in a peaceful society like ours isn't like that. The other isn't a criminal, isn't a malevolent force of, evil rhetoric. It's just someone else living under a different context than you. Now, if that context involves coming over the hill and, raiding your village, well, then you go. But generally, when was the last time that happened to you? So now this isn't a worry. We find others. Now, in the past, it did help to define those beyond the borders of your realm as a threat, this other that you needed to defend against, because generally it was true. If there are things called Vikings, then you need to put a watch out. You need to, spend some material making spears and shields and swords.
Build that wall.
And you do need to build a wall. Walls are very useful.
Yeah.
And but in the age of helicopters and airplanes, they're not as useful.
And ladders, yeah.
Ladders, yeah. Well, ladders are, if a stick with a notch at the end can push a ladder over really well, especially if you build a palisade on the wall. Anyway, I'm not going to get into medieval construction, although it's super interesting.
That would be an interesting topic, actually, but later.
There are better people on YouTube for that. So the other is usually fictional. Generally, they're a generalization. They are this thing that has some basis in truth, but in reality is nothing, has no kin to that. So in World War II, you get the National Socialists who are persecuting the Jews for things that they would just make up. Joseph Goebbels would be like, all right, here's today's lie and about them, and doesn't matter if it's true or not, here it goes. Mm-hmm. And sadly, you start seeing this in today's media where it doesn't matter if it's true or not. It's the feeling that counts. It's the thing. You have this other that we're trying to use, whether or not it's true, to get to the end, which is 1,000-year Reich, or the revolution, or a world without borders, or whatever nonsense utopian flavor of the day is. Now, how is this other constructed? Generally depends on what you want and the construction of your beliefs. So when a religious thing is, those that are evil because they do not follow our belief system, and then it's okay to just go and get rid of them. So those that do not subscribe to this or that belief system, either whether heathen, heretic, it doesn't matter. They're fair game for that. And you can make up whatever you want about them, and they become this other. You can make up ludicrous things about these groups. But the thing is that the other becomes this group. They become this, they're not an individual. It's not just this one guy at the top, because it's always this one guy followed by a bunch of other guys. It's a group of fascists or communists or Tea Party guys or Antifa or whatever. And yeah. Well, you can. Yeah. So you can make up these groups, and these groups aren't individuals, even though individualism is important. That's another episode. But when you group people in like that, they become a active body that acts with regard to that your perceived notion of what they do. Not, the baker who belongs to the Conservative Party of Canada isn't a baker. They're a oppressive baker. They are a baker who, thinks, oh, if only these other, who is part of this group who thinks like has these malevolent opinions and whatnot. And so this active group acting against you allows you to hold these views in such a way that you can act from a position of perceived necessity. So I need to do this because I'm under attack right now. Our liberal values are under attack. Maybe a bit, but like it's not going to destroy the system. Or we need to destroy the oppressive bourgeois government, or we need to get down party A or party B. Well, sounds all well and good, but none of these things are actual existential threats to our society. They're just part
They're just like stoking
society.
the flames, basically, right? They're creating
Right.
a boogeyman for us all to get primal fear activated in our medulla oblongata or whatever.
So this sounds like old hat, because I almost feel like this is a conversation that has been had forever. You go back to George Orwell. You go back to you see some stuff like this in I don't even want to say 1984, but like even you go back to like Homage to Catalonia, and you see how the Spanish Civil War played out and how they kind of legitimized all these stupid decisions the PLUM were making, and all these Spanish anarchists and communists coming together to, fail at a civil war. And you end up with a Franco government, which was just great for the Spanish. But and he realized that these people on all sides were just forcing their rhetorics, trying to get something that was ill-defined. So you have these extremists on all sides, and there's a no-win situation. So it's that justifies all of what they want to do, even if you don't define it. You don't even have to have an end at that point, because the end is just, it's better than this. Something better. That's not this. There's an existential threat. It's bad, and we need to get rid of it, because anything other than that is good. So
is there a way that you think that people would have been able to recognize that at the time? Like, were there red flags to say this is extremism, or does it just sort of like confusingly blend in with normalcy and regularity.
Well, there were literal red flags, but
that was sort of the pun. Yeah.
they were everywhere. Like how do you mean? Because
well, like imagine us as the people in that situation, like uneducated, half illiterate. Most of us, we have big families because half of our kids die before adulthood. Like just putting yourself in that time, would it be possible to know, hey, that's pretty extreme, we shouldn't do this? Or are people sort of beholden to the lies that are fed them since they're born? Like, are we victims of propaganda, or are we conspiring with them? Are we subject to the ideas that are implanted in us, or do we have the strength and commitment of will to decide inherently from birth as human beings, regardless of our upbringing, we have the choice to decide to be extreme or not?
I think, and this is kind of a unpopular view, is that I think some of us do. I hope that I have confidence to make that decision myself. I hope. But it takes work, and I have to think about what I'm doing and saying. And it's easy not to. And I don't think that education does help. Getting more people more used to thinking does help. Because nowadays we talk about how the internet is making everyone access all this stuff, but it was the same with the introduction of print media, where everyone can now see all the horrors of society, and now they're all talking about it, but they didn't know, they never saw their society. They couldn't see the forest for the trees, and now they're seeing the entire forest, and they're like, oh no. And we're kind of doing the same thing again now. So education helps, but we're also in society, no matter which society, is also in constant change. And it doesn't matter which society you're in, there's always constant change. And the thing is that it's hard to keep up, and it's scary, and it's easy to fall for it, even as a person, because someone tells you something and they're authority, and you just be like, maybe you're tired that day and you go, you know what, yeah, let's go with that. And
that's probably why it's so effective, like, too, right? Because on average, most people are going to be having one of those days.
A lot of people, yeah. So I'm lucky because I can think about these things, and I have the ability to pop my head up every once in a while and get a sense of, am I an idiot or am I not? And I can think about that and take myself critically. But then all of a sudden, like, we have a lot of people nowadays who are only watching CNN. They're only watching Fox. And
only Facebook.
Well, yeah, and they're getting what they want to hear, or they're getting what people want them to hear, and they're not thinking too much about it. So they say, like, this is bad. How could they do this? But they never questions, like, wait, is that actually bad? And you think about it for 5 seconds, it's like, no, why are they being so histrionic about this topic? Like, why do we need to be this? Like, why are they telling me this? Why are they getting me to act in this way? So then you move forward, and you're like, after a while, you can see the propaganda on both sides. And once you make your own opinion, you can move on from that. And I think that's often, that is kind of what happened to George Orwell. He was a communist. He believed in the value of all people, of all races, and all sorry, not races, but all classes. And because he had spent time, if you read Down and Out in Paris and London and Road to Wigan Pier, he spent a lot of time with the poor. He wanted to understand them. He wanted to get what they were into his bones, to understand what it was to be poor. And he didn't find anything. He found them to be, simple, base, but not beyond hope. And he said, we can improve this. And he saw communism as a thing. And then he went to war on the side of the communists in Spain. And like in a way similar to me, once you meet these people, the idealism is stripped away once you see the reality of it, and interaction with it, with the actual nature of what you're talking about, shows you a reality that has nothing to do with the rhetoric. I met the leaders of the Manitoba Communist Party when I was in my fire breathing phase, and I was just like, oh, this guy's kind of an idiot. And I was kind of one of the moments where I started to like move away from the rhetoric that I was getting in a lot of my university classes and just question the like, what we need is this. And I was like, okay, but what would that entail, instead of just being like, yeah, because it sounds good. If something sounds good, again, if it's too easy, then it's probably is too good to be true. Because when you actually do put yourself in a position to make change or affect change or do it, try and create a better future for yourself or those around you, it's a lot more complex. You have to deal with people that are different from you. And this is where that idea that we came up with of trust came in. When you actually meet and realize the realities of what's going on, you realize that it's not, red versus blue. It's not, they're conservative and I'm liberal, and they made a very satisfying thump when Trudeau won or something. It's like, no. It's way more complicated than that. It's because we are individuals in society interacting with each other, and to group ourselves up is ludicrous. Because like I'm part of a voting block because I voted, but that doesn't mean that I'm the same as everyone. This is my opinion on this one issue. And so when we assign these qualities to the other, it de-incentivizes us from, oh, no, I don't like that word.
Disincentivize?
It distances us from those people. So you can be like, oh, that guy, he owns a firearm and therefore he's a conservative and he has these other opinions and no. What you need to look at is, what do you need to do? And you need to trust those people on the other side, because you need to work with them, because we're all kind of in this together. So that baker who voted conservative and you voted liberal, well, guess what? His bread is great and you want to buy it because you like bread and you're hungry, and he enjoys making bread. And so it doesn't really matter that he voted conservative. If he's a jerk to you when you buy the bread, that's more important than his political affiliation or his group affiliation, or whether or not he's got this or that skin tone, or whether he's, part of which class or whatever. It doesn't matter. Is he effective at doing what you are contracting him to do in that? So, make
So it's like you're able to compartmentalize one thing from the other, like saying their political views don't affect his ability to and expertise in making bread. And likewise, owning a gun and being conservative on certain policy issues doesn't make you a block of the conservative party, as in one representative fraction of them. It sort of just means that you happen to vote on those policies at the same time that they did, right?
Right. And I think it's easy to other people when we take things very simply. So, well, let's go through this. This is going to be a bit of a ride. Sorry.
That's what we're here for, man.
I own firearms. That's a very conservative thing. I like my gun control, but I like it to make sense. So I'm already swinging through. Okay. So you already have assumptions about me. Now, I am very in favor of, I am very concerned about the environment. Very, very, very concerned. I think it's one of the most grave existential threats, not just our society, but our species has encountered. Hold on, let me just make a note here. Sorry about that. So it's one of the most important things that our society, not our society, but our species, the gravest threat we've ever encountered. And yes, I agree that, excuse me, a lot of it is well, yeah, it's man-made. It's a result of human interaction in the ecosystems, and it's evident just by the. Well, I'm not going to argue that it is, and so I'm very much leaning towards what we would call the left. So you're already siloing me if you're watching this. So it's easy to silo me on the left because, oh, climate denier, this and that. It's like already you're othering and you're creating groups in your head. So now remember, I'm Jordan. So when I went to the Greta Thunberg rally, I became part of the mass of people that were there. Now, the mass of people that were there all had various different opinions about everything. Now, I'm part of the crowd, so therefore I'm a Thunberg supporter. Now, the thing is, I find everything about her rhetoric worse than useless. So
Worse than
I
useless,
support.
not just useless.
Yes, I find it horribly counterproductive.
How so?
Well, it's a society's fault that the environment's failing. Okay, great. What are we going to do with that? Well, we got to reform society. So this is the whole conversation that if we get rid of these societal problems, then the economy, then the world's ecological problems will disappear because we need to solve racism before we solve, the climate. It's like, are you serious?
Is that part of that burn everything down strategy that when we talked about those 4 different strategies?
So you get people waving communist flags and anarchy flags, and there's like anarchist stickers all over Edmonton here. And you saying, oh, we need to go back to a simpler time where we lived with nature. It's like, oh yeah, I'd love to be dead for 10 years already.
Yeah, let's vote on that one.
Yeah. So no, I'm sorry. That's not okay. So yeah, I fall very heavily on we need to get out there and plant trees. We need to find better sources of energy. I'm looking at you, fusion power. And we need to and like more effective solar capture. We need to find better ways of getting resources. Let's go find them in space so we don't have to dig up our ground. We can get robots to do it, or we could go ourselves just for the sheer pleasure of it. There are better ways to do things, and those alternatives are those third ways I was talking about. Just because you see two, you have a trolley problem and you see 2 paths doesn't, are you looking harder? Can you find another path? There might be one there. And so this is an example of me showing you look how complex I am. Lol. No, I'm showing you my complexity, which is just as complex as any one of you listening. If you take time to think about these issues and challenge yourself and make yourself uncomfortable about your opinions, you'll probably find yourself becoming more and more nuanced, even to yourself. And then you'll find yourself not willing to be put up with saying, oh, you're just this or you're just that. It's like, no, I'm me. So when you don't submit to being another, or you don't submit to letting people just be another, well, you can interact with people as people, but at the same time, you can find better solutions to the problems, because the teleological religious end that you have, where if we get rid of racism, then we'll get rid of our ecological problems and the reefs will come back. You'll see if we put more women in charge, well, everything will just become better. It's like, well, Queen Victoria, Margaret Thatcher, these, no one really talks about them too much. I wonder why. They're exceptions that prove the rule. It's like, are they?
But then there's Angela Merkel, and everybody wants to crucify her for like making rational, sound, perfectly stable decisions. Like they just look for reasons to criticize.
Yeah, or Queen Elizabeth I, who, she was this wonderful queen. Go look it up what she did. You probably could find some exceptional things that would not fly in today's political climate. Although she was really interesting.
Yeah, but if nothing else, she was still a product of her time and her environment, as we all are. And when you're bred and raised in a certain environment, there's only so much you can be illuminated to,
Right. And making her a woman wouldn't have it did change her decisions because there were political contingencies that she needed to take into account because she was a woman. But it didn't make her somehow more enlightened. People are people. Women are people. Men are people. Everyone's people. And we need to take
If
them
anything,
as...
it just made like sexism more uncomfortable for men because like her subordinates were supposed to be her advisors, which were all male. That was
Yeah.
probably really uncomfortable for them to be working for a woman at the time.
Well, the thing was is that she was exceptional as a person. And that's what made her so powerful, because of her exceptionalism. And that's almost in calling her, she's successful because she's a woman, or she was just, she fought, so she had a chance. If she would have been given a chance, she would have done even more. It's like, you need to read more.
Yeah, but it's not to say it's like because she's a woman she was great. She was great and a woman. It's like in addition to, like Nefertiti or Cleopatra. Like they weren't just great because they were women. They were great people in and of, like, just...
I don't know if Cleopatra was great. She was, well,
she was a genius at politics and manipulation. Like, so
it was almost natural.
psychology before psychology, you have to say she had some kind of insight that nobody else had. Regardless of what you approve of her method, she was still very effective, right?
Yeah, well, Antony was a bit of a odd, well,
but again, he was a product of his environment. He was bred to be the egoist, machoism, Machiavelli sort.
Right. Let's not discount biology too much. Context isn't everything. Mark Antony was built Mark Antony, and then he was encultured Mark Antony. So it's nature and nurture, that whole dichotomy. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. So I think we've hit on quite a bit of stuff here, though.
Can I ask you some more about from what you talked about from your intro? I sort of only got halfway through that so far.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Let's keep going.
So there was the idea, and I apologize if I'm paraphrasing this incorrectly, so just please correct me. But there was the idea of promoting virtue by use of indiscriminate force as sort of a means to evoke justice, or to, I don't want to say impose justice, because people are like implicitly under contract by their citizenship to agree and comply to it. But the evocation, like the action, the manifestation of justice being, going back to the whole, the monopoly of violence sort of aspect of extremism. What I'd like to ask you about that, though, is how to differentiate extremism from governance. How do you know when a government's gone too far, or a military has gone too far, or a country's propaganda has gone too far? Like, is sponsoring a coup d'etat, if you didn't plan the coup d'etat, is that legitimate? Or because it's a coup, all coups are extremism? Or like, where do you draw a line, and how should people find those lines to draw for themselves?
My first thought was to go to Mill. And if you are, or Locke, well, with Locke, are you infringing on someone's property, health, life, or what was the fourth thing? Dang it! His four rights. And speech, essentially. So, are you stopping people from living? Yeah, expression. That was it. Thank you. Are you stopping people from talking or thinking? Are you stopping people from living and being healthy? Or are you taking their stuff? If you're doing any of those three things, you're probably not virtuous.
Okay, let's consider it this way then, like a bowling pin, right? You throw the bowling ball down the lane, you hit the head pin. Just because the ball doesn't touch the other pins, it's still your action of throwing the ball that or the force that you threw the ball that helped knock the pins over. So if you didn't start the coup d'etat, but you sponsored the people who started it by giving them money or guns or helping them with a print shop to spread out propaganda, like how far is too far in imposing yourself upon other people? What's extreme?
Well, I tend to, like I said, I tend to subscribe to Mill in some ways, as well as Locke there. Just leave people alone. unless they're not leaving you alone. Then and if you go back to Locke, you're in a state of war when they are threatening, the natural rights. Now, natural rights is contentious, but
Inalienable rights you're talking about.
yes, yeah. Well, yes, it would later become that. But if you are imposing your will upon someone else, do you have a plan? Are you doing this for a reason that, like, are you averting a war? So I guess you could take the utilitarian argument. Doing this to avert the thing. Now, is that actually going to happen? Now, with a lot of these coups d'etats, you see it didn't really cause much good, but it seemed like a good idea at the time. Now, extremism, I believe, it seems like it's a group thing, and you keep going towards state intervention and stuff like that. And I don't really have an answer with regard to state intervention, but it is, if you're Kermit Hoover and you're going over to the Middle East to shake things up, then yeah, I wouldn't call that extremism because I don't really know the man, but they felt they were fighting a war. Now, I would say it is a radical action. I feel this subject is making me
but it's good. That's sort of the point of the conversation.
Yeah, but I don't know if I think it is good because I'm not going to be able to come. I'm not going to be able to come down either way on this because
that's a good answer, though.
No, well, yes and no, because I can argue both, which is a problem for me here.
You should do that.
I can say,
explain both sides.
Yeah, okay, yes, but yeah. Well, see, the thing is that I'm going to. So the thing is that on one side, I can say, yes, it's an extremist because they're not leaving people alone. No, it's not extremist because it's better than invading them. And it's better to try and change their mind. And because you saw what happened in the Soviet Union, you saw the mass human wave attacks and the insurmountable casualties, you know what happened in the Holodomor, and you think, well, better dead than red, so let's go. And so you think this is going to be better for the people of Iran. But the thing is that it wasn't better for the people of Iran because their government became demonstrably worse. And Iran was so close to the Soviet sphere of influence that they couldn't not deal with them. And I think the Americans just made, instead of extreme mistakes, I think they were making stupid mistakes. And I don't know if that's an act of extremism, so much of an act of ignorance. Now, ignorance can lead to extremism, and when you become ideologically bent, now they were ideologically bent towards against Soviet practices, but to know whether they're extremist, I don't know if I'm willing to make a judgment on that. Now it's easy to do it. It's like, of course they were bad, rah, or like, anything that this and that. But
yeah,
hindsight's great.
Yeah.
So it's so great. I'm a historian, become a master of hindsight. So I think it's whether, maybe I should steer this way. Are you acting collectively or are you acting individually? And does your ideological faith force you to act in a way that prioritizes the collective rather than the individual? And a collective acting as one who needs a direction. And if there's nothing to do, well, you need a reason, and another gives you a great way to push yourself in a direction. And if there's nothing else, you can always do a 5-year plan. So a lot of times you get a lot of like Death to America stuff in the non-American areas of the world. And it works great because America has bad things. Has bad things about it. Canada has bad things about it. You can find bad things everywhere. Look under any rock, you can find something terrible. So it's easy to create these structures of contention, of conflict, and then out of these, you can create structures of action. We have this group, communists or the Jews or the capitalists or Democrats or the Republicans, and your group is on the right side. So everything we say is right. Everything CNN wouldn't lie to us. And then that allows you to say what we need to do is we need to create a world without that other thing. And to do that, we need to do this prescribed thing, which, well, the facts say otherwise. Well, those facts are either wrong and you can problematize it. It's so easy after that. You just apply the algorithm to anything that comes, and then you can get whatever you want out of it.
And that, by our definitions, was extreme, was it not? Whenever you have that algorithm that says black and white, this is this, and this leads to this, that's extremism?
Yeah, well, I think extremism is when you take, and then so let's go back to the,
Scooch.
Let's go back to the word itself, is that it's extreme. You're taking an idea to the extreme. So yes, guns are dangerous. They kill. They have the potential to kill. Unless you don't have any ammo, then it's a hunk of steel or ceramic. But
and it's a blunt instrument.
Yeah, there's a lot of these books here that are big enough to be dangerous. But the thing is that there's this obvious target, and they can hurt. Now, why aren't we talking about car accident deaths? Because a lot more people get injured and hurt by car accidents, and we're not treating it the same. You shouldn't, why are you buying an assault Jeep? Excuse me. So the thing is that it's easy. It is an actual issue. Now, any issue. So, and I think the thing is extremism, and the reason I'm not willing to just have a rote definition and more be satisfied with the 3-hour discussion is that I don't want to define it, because I find that would be constricting, because it's so varied on every issue, but it always comes from an actual problem. So if I was to try, I guess, you have an actual problem, a real problem. Germany's poor. The government's ineffective. Everyone's miserable. The money's worthless. We got blamed for something that kind of wasn't our fault. And we didn't really know what we were getting into, and they didn't know what they were getting into, but we lost. And, well, what do you want? Well, we're mad and we want revenge, and we want to, so you have an issue that is actually an issue. You don't want to go poor, so you're worried about the economy. You're worried about violence, so you worried about guns. You're worried about anything. But then you take the solution and you go to the extreme. So you find not just a solution. What can we possibly do? But you find the one that will come up with the most results. And this is why I said there is that element of impatience in it. So you find the one that's going to come up with the most results, or sounds like it will come up with the most results the fastest. So ban guns. And everyone's like, well, but I haven't, in my family have a range that we safely discharge firearms, as this is our life work.
Yeah, as a point of practice.
Yeah, so no. We should be make it so that everyone has to pay a carbon tax, and I'll get rid of stuff. It's like, how? Demonstrate that that's a thing. So we're going to make everyone pay for the carbon that they emit. Well, I'm just, so if I hold my breath, I don't have to pay taxes, right? Well, generally, yes. After about 5 minutes, I won't have to. But
That's more an issue with the rollout than the policy idea itself, though, right?
Right. So you instead of thinking about it, you come to a knee jerk or some extreme reaction. So something that will fix the problem instantly. We gotta fix it now. We gotta, do it now, or get rid of it now, or
If you ask anybody, they'll all say we don't want to do this. They'll all say they think rationally and they don't make knee-jerk decisions and their implementations are thought out. But in practice, it's not so much the case. And I'm wondering how are people supposed to identify in the moment, if there is a way to do this? I don't know. How do you think they can identify in the moment, like this is being extreme? We should hold back and like do something rational. Let's think
well, I've
about.
heard people say that, and it's great when you hear that. It's like, wait, this might be a bit too much, too fast. But I think there's a difference between practice and theory. So, you're in class and it's really great to talk about all these highfalutin things that you could do and get like anthropologists getting their doctorate going, I could fix society if only people read my paper. It's like, yeah, I bet. And then you have
I've
to,
been
the
known to
rubber
say
hits
that
the
before
road.
too.
Yeah. And well, in archives, like we could talk theory all day, but at some point you have to make a decision on how to organize the historical records. And there's no way around it. You have to actually do it. If you want to sit around and figure out the best way, then what we need to do is we need to decolonize the archives. And everyone who's working in the archives is like, what? What does that even mean? Well, we need to do this and this and this. And it's like, we're already understaffed and have zero budget. Do you want to volunteer to do that? Well, so you create reasons that it's not happening. And so if it's easy to make theory. So, but when you actually try and put theory into practice, say like, Portland Autonomous Zone or the Chaz up in Seattle, it's like, ooh, let's do this. We're going to make a perfect society. I think when you ask, I think it's easy by the fact that if I take a medical analogy, so I'm taking a drug or something to fix something. I just take a drug and I ask they take it and they're like, good. You take the drug, and I ask, or I take like the flu shot, and I look over at them and I say, what's the mechanism by which this will, affect the change that I'm looking for in my body? And they'll be like, well, it does this, and they explain it. But if, they're doing something and they're, wooing over my aura or something, and I'm like, what's the mechanism by which this is helping? And they have an answer and they don't really know. And it's just like, oh, this just works. I'm going to be like, it's going to make me skeptical. And I should make you skeptical. What's the mechanism by which the autonomous zone will create a global utopia? Well, it just will. What happened? Well, we just need more. What's the mechanism that more women CEOs will create a better capitalism or destroy capitalism? Oh, well, because women are this. It's like, well, what's the mechanism that women are better than men at making decisions like that? Well, what is the mechanism that that will stop gun violence in Canada? Well,
That's a really good question, though, because like if you assume or if you believe, I guess belief is the word. If you believe that there's a qualitative benefit to having diversity of opinion in a group of people, like a board of directors or something, you might not know specifically the quantity or the quantifiable amount of whatever you're trying to improve, but you might still believe in the benefit of like diversity of opinion is a good example of this, because I don't know what a black person will contribute just by being black and being raised black and being, I'm not black. I don't know what contribution they have to give me. But as a citizen of a country that is not racist, I believe in having people in those positions just for the sake of there being a potential that could be realized that I'm unaware of. Do you know what I mean?
well,
Like
but it's not even that he's black. It's that black guy has some like, you have anyone who dies. Now I believe this was Mill in utilitarianism, I think,